Um, so what's been happening is I have been playing Fire Pro on my laptop, which is not designed for that kind of high-tech thing, and it was slightly melty. So I have had to reboot the whole thing in a full factory reset mode, and hopefully it will survive the making of this video. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, trouble your tribbles and dial M for motherfucker, because we are here live, slightly late, for Mondo Murder Party. I hope you're all alright out there. Tonight's show is wisely or unwisely titled Variants Are the Devil, or My Favourite Variants. Both is applicable. And there may or may not be some wisdom to calling the show that, given the news of the last half an hour or so, if you've seen anything in the British news today, about the most frequent use of the word variant. Here's my counterpoint. I actually think it couldn't be more appropriate. It may not be particularly tasteful, but the way I see variants in the comics industry is not a million miles away from how variants have affected the rest of the world. So, what are variants? Why are variants? Etc. etc. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm just going to go on. Oh, bloody hell. So, I'm getting a billion notifications about the YouTube channel. And it's doing mine up. So, oh my god, I don't care. All of these things that I just don't care about. And the way that it pops up is it shows up exactly on top of my screen. Which is slightly irritating, because then I can't see what I'm doing. I just see this person has put up some kind of ludicrous right-wing opinion here on YouTube. I'm like, well done. There's certainly a deficit of those, isn't there? So, variants, what are they? What are they for? Well, to give you the best example is to show you a physical example. Now, one of my favourite film directors, John Carpenter. If I have to list John Carpenter films for you, you're watching the wrong channel, right? I don't know where to start. The Thing, oh man, Halloween. Off the top of my head, those two are probably the best. But year before last, can't remember when, he decided he was going to write a Joker comic. I don't normally care about Batman or the Joker anymore, but John Carpenter doing a Batman comic did sound interesting. So I learnt about it about a week too late, and it sold out everywhere except for certain retail store which had a collection of variants. And I was like, oh well, I don't really want the variants, but okay, I mean, if it's the only way of reading the thing, and I want to support Mr. Carpenter, I'd like his comic to do well so he does more projects like that, because I know he has had a few problems with income, so, you know, comics sell as well. Give John some more work, right? However, I was working at the Comic-Con a few weeks after. Who's John Carpenter? Yeah, Zach, John Carpenter. Halloween, surely, if nothing else. One of the most iconic horror slasher movies of all time, right? He wrote a Batman comic. I'll show you the cover in a minute. So, I was looking at the comic show, and certain retail store happened to have their own stand there. I was like, oh, okay, I'll go check them out. And they had a dozen, they had 5 dozen of these selected packs, right? And it was these. There are 3 issues of the Joker here. And I don't know if you can see from here, but the retail price was $59.99 for 3 comics. Now, I'm not stupid. There is not a thing on the planet that would make me pay more than a £5 for any comic, let alone 20 quid. So, I got this on their Black Friday sale. I think it cost a £5, and I only bought it out of spite, to be honest. But yeah, so John Carpenter did this Joker comic. It's quite good. The lettering's a bit askew. The same place now does this for about a tenner, which is, you know, a lot better than 60 quid for 3 comics, because that's madness. Yeah, so there was low shipping in the UK. Still, 60 quid for 3 comics. I can buy a new Xbox game for less than that, and I'll guarantee I will get you many more minutes, let alone hours or weeks of entertainment out of a new game than I will 3 of the same comic. So, why does this happen? Well, back in the midst of time, when there were only 4 channels, the internet was a terrible idea in your uncle's mind while he was looking up pictures from the Sunday Sport website. Comic shops that are still around and still doing alright, given everything, use a process in their ordering called cycle sheets. So, if you are a retailer type who is not aware of this, and you don't do this, you are about to do this process, and you can give me 10% of all the money that you are about to save. Very simple process. Week 1, a comic arrives, and you have ordered, hypothetically, let's just say, this is 50 comics. Right, this is 50. And in your first week, you sell 25. So you record that you have sold 25 copies in your first week of said comic. Second week, you sell 10 copies. Week 2, you sold 10 copies. In total, you have sold 35 copies of the 50 issues that you've ordered, right? Third week, you sell 5 copies. That leaves you, if I've got this right, 10 copies left over. Now what that means is you have ordered 10 copies too many, right? And let's just allow that you're keeping 5, and that's a lot, for your back issue section, right? You've still got 5 copies too many. So what you do is, because on the 4th week is when the new issue ships, right? You drop your order by 5. Right, and let's just say you don't want to do a back issue section, so you drop it by 10. So instead of ordering 50, you order 40, because that's a firm sale you know you can sell on this comic. And you ignore anything else except your cycle sheets. It doesn't matter what is offered to you on a incentive basis. If you can get 1 in 50, you can get 1 in 50 covers. You know what? That's going to leave you with 9 copies that you can't sell. So you order 40 copies and you ignore everything else. Because what happened, I think, this might be when your man Brian Hibbs at the legendary Comics Experience in San Francisco invited a Marvel member of staff over and explained the process. Because it was a good idea, right? Brian said, I think retailers and publishers ought to have a better idea of what each other do. Come work in our shop for a couple of weeks and see what the process is. And after that, retailers suddenly were hit with, like, you can order what you normally order, but if you order this many, you can have this cover, and because there's less of it, it'll be rarer, so you can sell it for more. Sounds good on the surface, because when you've got extra copies, they might sell at back issues, they might not. And in the rest of the world, time is money. In comics retail, space is money. So those issues that you've over-ordered have to go somewhere, and they're non-returnable, which means you are stuck with them. So they have to fit somewhere in your limited space and turn over a profit. Because if you're ordering that many, you're going to lose money. And I know firsthand of shops who ignored that cycle sheet process and said, do you know what, we can store these somewhere. And one of my opening jobs at one retailer I worked at was having to count dozens of boxes of overorders. Things that were rare anywhere else in the area. This place had so many multiples and could do nothing with them because they were all jammed in these boxes, and the process of going through them to restock them was a good day or so. So you could never turn over the stuff from your overorders fast enough to make a profit on it, assuming anybody wanted it. So that is the process. The publishers realised that the retailers knew how to order and found a way to circumvent it, and there are no end of shops that chased that variant short-term gain, and they ain't there anymore, or they don't have a diamond account anymore because they wasted money on nothing. And you know, if you follow that process, you're fine. If you're not following the process, you're one of those shops that is charging £50 plus for a copy of Batman Fortnite because you need to make that money back really quickly because you've wasted it on other things. So don't do that. That is not across the board, though. There are some variants that are not offered on a incentive basis. There are some variants which are just like a which variant do you want? Do you want this cover or do you want this cover? You can order as many if you want of equal quantity, which is fine. I have no problem with that whatsoever. That's an option. It's just when it's put on that attempting to trick the retailers against their own common sense and business sense. One, it's short-term gain, and two, it's not really that wise to try and kill off your main source of product sales. Do you know what I mean? Like, that short-term gain's fine, but in the end, all you do is encourage comic shops to kill themselves, and then I don't know where you think you're going to sell your product. I know there's a desire for publishers to believe that the direct market is just an annoying thing they can transcend. But you know what? Remove the direct market from pre-order sales of comics and see how much you're selling then. So yeah, variants are the devil. They are there to taunt you into buying nothing but potential. There's, for every variant that does £100 in sales, there are 15 that ain't going anywhere. There are comic shops up and down the country which have yellowing Secret Invasion or Siege variants on the wall still at triple figures because no one cared. And they ain't gonna care. Nothing's gonna turn around. Nobody's gonna go, oh, do you know what? I really remember the good old days of when Civil War had 4 different covers. Maybe I will go back and play it. It's not gonna happen. It ain't gonna happen. And it's a shame. And it's killed a lot of comic shops which had potential, because I always want there to be more comic shops, because I want there to be places for this stuff to be sold. But if you do that stuff, you're gonna die. Like, I mean, this will be a recurring theme in these shows, I think, but my desire is to remove the secondary market from the primary concerns of comics. I don't like comics being sold as a potential investment item. I believe the purpose of the comic shop is to say, here is a episode of something that you don't know about, have a read, come back and buy the next, and then you create habitual customers, and then you just keep on stacking on that, and everything else is just in the way. It's in the way of delivering the content, and it's upside down. Do you know what I mean? Like, only in comics do you go, we will try, the most prestigious thing you can do is hide the stuff, is to put it in as inaccessible a place as possible. We'll put it on the wall, but we'll put it in a slab. It's like, no. Like, Waterstones don't sell the first printing of Lord of the Rings, and that's the only way of getting it, and you have to pay £200 for the copy. There are at least dozens of printings of Lord of the Rings, and if you want to be a freak who goes hunting down the first printing, you can, but that's not the only way of getting into it, because otherwise the book industry would die. Like, if you want to read No Logo by Naomi Klein, and you really should, especially if you have any interest in comics retail whatsoever, you should definitely read No Logo, because it is the deconstruction of the language of advertising that you really need. Like, I don't know how you would approach something like previews or the comics industry in general without a copy of No Logo and a copy of 1984. Because otherwise the language, it will befuddle you. It will, and you don't need that. You need simplicity. You need to say, this thing is coming out on this date, and it features this, and here's some preview pages. The end. So, that's why variants are the devil, and it is embarrassing as an ex-retailer to walk into shops and see where that prestigious space ought to be given to, here are things that are worth reading. Please try something for about £2 and see if you like it. And if you like it, come back and buy some more. And it's like, do you know what? We're going to have like £50 variants of, like, I don't know, Summit. Like, who is this for beyond a very small niche of very silly people? I am pro the reading. I am pro the interiors. I think the cover is meant to be, I don't know, it's like a Wonderbra, right? It's meant to get your attention, and hopefully like that superficial enticement is there to make you want to learn more about what's inside. You know, what do you have to say? What do you have to bring to the conversation, rather than the be-all and end-all being going, oh, it's a Milo Manara cover, I can sell it on the sake of, like, go away, die, you're in the way, you know? I've not been very well lately, can you tell? I'm a bit soapboxy, and also it's nice to be doing the show, you know, at a reasonable hour. So on to the crows, as Miss Blister pointed out previously on my timeline. You know what? You could say the crows were responsible for my computer being up the creek. I put it down to me using software on the machine that it wasn't designed for. And the software going, ow, and then the hardware going, ow, I need a break, please let me cool down. So if you can hear the background noise of a slight shh, that's because my fan's on. So yeah. Welcome to the show. Everything should die. There is no sponsor this week. The reason there is no sponsor is I reached out to someone and they wanted me to pay the postage for me sending them sending me the material. I'm like, not paying to advertise you. I'm offering you a platform. And I don't really need it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's alright, I'll do it without a sponsorship bit. Okay, I'll tell you what. Blah blah blah. This is the hat of non-sponsorship this week, and I've just realised we've got this far in and there hasn't even been the song. So, let me regale ye as you make a cup of tea, with tales of long boxes and tapped. You search for the meta barons, you come back with a green lantern. I mean, it's hardly Harriman's crazy cat. Ba-doo-doo. I mean, it's hardly Harriman's crazy cat. Ba-doo-doo. I was tinkering with that one in the shower earlier on. I quite like that version. Yeah, so, speaking of which, you know when you're in the shower, right, and you're having a full-on soaky karaoke session? Soaky karaoke. I just made that up. I'm really happy with that one. It was worth waking up today for soaky karaoke. That's a t-shirt waiting to happen. I couldn't remember the words to the song "A Man You Don't Meet Every Day" by the Pogues. So my version was like, I'm a man you don't meet every day. I can't remember the words I made up well. Something about Karl Marx. Anyway, let's just get back to... I'm not in a really ad-libby mood, apparently. So, before I move on to the next bit, let's see what you nice people are saying in the comments. Yeah, bum, bum, bum. Yeah, da, 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 da. Who's saying things? People are reacting to my video. Well, good. You should. You're doing overtime coding. Blimey, Matt. So, yes, Matt, I should come down and give you a help. See? Zach, yes, that John Carpenter. Angus, you're right, and it's an outrage. Like, as far as I'm concerned, there is only one significant man in history called John Carpenter. And I'm sure the others have done good things, but none of those things are Halloween. So, no. Sorry about that. It's like, there's a really famous coral reef, I don't know what the word is, mapper, called Neville Coleman. And he did so much work in his life mapping the coral reefs of the world that whenever you put me into Google, you get him, and I'm not going to match that unless I do something particularly nasty. So, yeah. That's just how it goes in this life. So, yes. These are the Jokers. I paid a tenner. Was it a fiver? Anyway, something significantly less than the cover price. Because if you pay more than a tenner for a comic, you kind of have to go, what am I paying for? I think. As I go, yeah. If you figure £10 gets you your Netflix subscription, then you kind of like, that's real money. How many minutes of entertainment I'm getting? So my favourite variants. Gonna move up a bit cause the stuff's over here. So I apologise to the Americans who watched a variation of this show on Friday. I have decided in my finite wisdom that my Friday night show is basically going to be a dress rehearsal for the Monday show. So what we're going to do is on Friday I'll spitball the idea, throw in more inappropriate jokes, and then having rewatched it over the weekend, by Monday I'll go, okay, that doesn't need to be in there, here are the things that are relevant to the point. But there will be variation because I'll use different examples to illustrate my point. So even if you've seen the same structure, you're getting different content, so it's worth watching twice. Please watch twice. That's a good thing to do. Watching the thing again, because there's more and it's different. And I'll move back a bit because it's giving, like, this angle's giving me the biggest forehead in the world. So, favourite variants. To kick off with, in the mid-90s, Marvel, in their wisdom, were trying to find anything that worked. Anything they could hook on. All of the Image guys had just left. And as I'm sure I've said before, Marvel infamously commented, we believe that the attraction of our work is the characters and not the creators. And boy, did that one backfire. So they did stuff like The Age of Apocalypse, which is where all the X-Men books were cancelled and then relaunched as different titles like Generation Next and The Amazing X-Men and that kind of thing, right? That did pretty well, but you can only go with that story so many times, and Spider-Man was a clone, but then wasn't. So they did a thing at one point in the mid-90s, which I believe was Scott Lobdell's idea, called Flashback -1, where they would publish the issue before the first issue of all of their comics for a month, and they would have short intro by Stan Lee as a character, introducing everything as if the thing was being written back in the 60s, which is when presumably these things would be published. And most of them are not great in one's opinion. Like the issue of Cable by Jose Ladron's really good, but every issue by Cable by Jose Ladron's really good because Jose Ladron's the best artist to ever draw Cable. The end. And I know I argue significantly about the nature of subjective opinion not being critical factual analysis, but in this case, prove me wrong. Yeah, look at everyone who drew Cable, and then look at Jose Ladron. It ain't an argument, it's just a, fact. But my favourite of them, the one that I thought was quite good, was the extremely cute one, which was, okay, so Untold Tales of Spider-Man was a Hail Mary from the Spider-Man offices. As I mentioned previously, the Spider-Clone stuff really didn't work, and it backfired massively in Marvel's face. Marvel really thought that what the audience wanted was a single Spider-Man who wasn't married to Mary Jane, with a completely new back history, and man, they did not want that. That was not, there are people who I see on comic groups now who are like, when Ben Reilly was announced to be the real Spider-Man, I stopped reading Spider-Man and I haven't been back since. That was 1995, and it's 2021 now. So that little shtick cost Marvel a significant amount of people not buying Spider-Man comics for 25 years. And you can say to them, look, they said it was a work. Pete was really Spider. No, not coming back. So they did a number of things to kind of resolve this particular cock-up. So they brought Pete back, obviously, and one day, when I remember, I will do the reading of the dialogue that explains why Aunt May wasn't dead. She was actually kidnapped by Norman Osborn, and the woman who was Aunt May was an actress. Now, I've got to try and work this one out. An actress hired while Norman was in Europe, right, to play the part of Aunt May, given plastic surgery and memory implants, pretending to be Aunt May up until the point she died. I gotta wonder, what did the audition call sheet look like for that one? Really? That's my job? Do I get a per diem Do I have to, like, come back in every once in a while? Come back to no, I just have to be an old woman who thinks she's Aunt May now. Okay. And then I have to die. I mean, okay. It's a hell of a gig. It sounds like an episode of Inside Number 9. Please watch Inside Number 9 if you don't do that, because it's the best thing that the BBC have done this century, except possibly Alan Partridge. Kind of a toss-up. And one of the other things was Untold Tales of Spider-Man. This was quite an intriguing, interesting, and lovely project. The pitch was Kurt Busiek of Marvel's fame, along with a number of other things, would write the issues of Spider-Man between the original run of Amazing Fantasy / Amazing Spider-Man. So these would be like the filling in the gaps, explaining little bits of inconsistencies and stuff. And it was drawn, I think, by Ron Frenz, who does a fairly good Steve Ditko impression, right? So, Untold Tales of Spider-Man, flashback, -1, tells us what happened to the Parkers. As in, Richard and Mary, the real parents of Peter, unless you go with Trouble, where apparently May is Pete's mum, but not really, but then don't call it Spider-Man. Anyway. So Untold Tales of Spider-Man is the last case of Richard and Mary Parker, who are working for S.H.I.E.L.D. And there was a regular cover, which looked very serious. It was by John Romita, it's quite good, but it's not the one by Fred Hembeck, which I really like. Fred Hembeck brings something. It's kind of hard to quantify why I like him, but I suppose I would say he brings the childlike, which is different to childish, the childlike imagination and unfettered joy to these things. There is a, what the Danish call hyggelig quality to his art. It's quite endearing and lovely, and he does the backup strip as well. He's been like documenting his love of comics and various comics histories for decades now, at least since the 70s, I think. His issue of Fantastic Four roasts is, at the time in the 80s when comedy roasts were a cracker, the one he did on the Fantastic Four was a banger. So yes, this was the, I don't know if it was a split variant, or if it was a 50-50 thing, or a 1 in 10, or whatever, but nonetheless, this is the Fred Hembeck variant cover to Untold Tales of Spider-Man -1, and I think it's very good. So there. So, there appear to be comments. Oh, hang on. Why do people... Right, I should quantify this because I got told off by Fever last time for this. If I'm doing a show, right, that's fine. If you ask me a question related to the show in the comment section. If I'm doing a show and you're asking me a question via Facebook Messenger completely unrelated to the thing, while seeing I'm doing a show, maybe don't. maybe just wait. It's like oh, he appears to be busy, so just don't message him. Next, I mentioned this last time, but it's worth bringing up again because it's very good. IDW in 2015 or 16, no, 2015. Did an adaptation of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas by Hunter S. Thompson. Obviously, this adaptation was by a chap called Troy Little, and a number of artists. Because it was a weird process. They brought out the graphic novel, and like I screwed up because I genuinely thought comic version of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. That's gonna be a Christmas win. Like, because who doesn't know somebody who's really into that stuff? If I got a copy of it for Christmas, I'd be made up. So I ordered quite high on it. I was like, this will be a thing, and it'll be an evergreen. And for some reason, didn't go that well. I don't know. There's another like Hunter S. Thompson comic called Gonzo, but it's kind of crap, to be honest. So maybe that stole the thunder. I don't know. Maybe just people go like, there's already a thing. Like, there's a story by Brian Michael Bendis in his autobio story comic called Fortune and Glory, and it's about the process of trying to sell the comic Torso, which is about America's first serial killer meeting up with Elliot Ness, as in the Untouchables, right? And obviously, as anyone who's vaguely aware of the world will know, Elliot Ness was a real man who fought real crimes. So Bendis and his writing partner shopped this treatment around various Hollywood studios, saying like, look, this is a story, right? Come on, Elliot Ness, America's first serial killer. That's money. I'd go and see that. And every studio invariably said Elliot Ness, as in The Untouchables. Like, yeah, the Sean Connery. Yeah, and doesn't that studio own that? But you can't own a man. Like, you can't own a real man. That's not how copyright works. Like, no, we can't touch it because of The Untouchables. Like, but I think that's kind of how things work. It's like, there's one of them, so I guess that's all that ever existed. So, Jim Mafood, who's done lots and lots of good comics, including a comic called Stupid Comics, which was his look at coffee culture, and sold through coffee shops. Actually, it's a pretty smart thing. He did a comic, sold it through a coffee shop, sold loads, and then it got reprinted by Image, sold loads. Then it came out as a book, sold loads. And on the back of that, he did a thing called Girl Scouts, which is lots of socially redeeming fun about women drug dealers in New York. It's great fun. I highly recommend it. He's always doing lots of little cool projects and stuff, and his Facebook page is always worth a follow because it's usually full of his most recent artwork where he's been doing his sketches and stuff. This is the cover he did for Fear in Las Vegas issue 1. So the whole trick I'm learning is trying to get it bang on so the light doesn't catch the bag. Because obviously I don't want you guys to be looking at a shimmering light. I want you to see the lovely artwork. Yeah, Fear and Loathing, this is a cracker of a book anyway. Like, if you have a Hunter S. Thompson fan in your life, they will probably appreciate it unless they've got it already. But in which case, I can just take the book back to the shop with the receipt and go, I've already got it. But yeah, it's a banger. This is my favourite cover. There's also a really good one by William Ray, but because I'm silly, I didn't get it because I went, I've got the book. I don't want to be too decadent. Do you know what I mean? I've already got the comic. I've already got the book that this comic is reprinting. But yeah, like it, love it. So yeah, that's Jim's cover for Fear and Loathing Las Vegas. Stay tuned for a special announcement later in the show while I have a quick drink. Are you guys all right? How are you doing for this? I've got 3 viewers. Wow. It's a bit quiet tonight. I wonder what I've done. It's probably because I stopped early. Started late. Never be late. That's the basic rule. I don't know what you're laughing at, Fever, but it's probably something highly amusing that I said. It wasn't that sentence, obviously, because that was a train wreck of a sentence. But at least I haven't turned into Frankie Howard yet, so that's quite good. Weird reaction talking to the Americans. I start turning into Frankie Howard. I don't know why. it's weird twitch that I have. If there are like too many like colonials in my area, I start reverting to 1970s stand-up fake heterosexual comedians. I don't know what's about. Oh man, tonight again as usual. Sponsored by Rockstar. Yeah, if you can't afford to sign up to my Patreon, just send me some cans of Rockstar. It is my birthday next week. I'm just saying. Yeah, I mean, cans of Rockstar. Great gift. Cans of Rockstar. A great gift. Please hire me, makers of Rockstar. I don't do many adverts, but I will do adverts for this. It's just like, I would only advertise things I'm genuine about. It's like I genuinely drink about 3 of these a day, because I don't have ludicrous amounts of B12, you would not believe the slowness. Next up on the scale. So, on Friday I mentioned Afterlife of Archie on the grounds that it's one of the best comics published this century. Again, don't argue with me. I've got Bab Jacket than you, so you know what I mean, you're not going to win. I'll beat you on sartorial grounds. So, Afterlife of Archie was kind of the precursor to the change in Archie's direction. Kind of preempted all of the more adult, if for want of a better word, take on Archie books, and a more contemporary look where that whole Stan Goldberg, Dan DiCarlo art style was kind of like, there's nothing wrong with it, but they've been using that style for, you know, half a century. It's alright, there's nothing wrong with it, but sometimes you need to just change things up. So Afterlife of Archie was kind of the kick in the balls to the Archie audience, saying, okay, we're doing things differently now. And from there you get to Riverdale, which is obviously one of the best things on television, being an absolute hot mess of genre defying. It's like this week it's an underground boxing show. Oh wait, no, it's social commentary on Dungeons and Dragons. Oh no, it's a look at the underground gay lifestyle. Oh wait, no. It's a David Lynch parody. Really? Because this week it seems to be a musical. Like, it never stops, and you can never relax with Riverdale and go, I've got a pretty good idea what's going to happen this month. It's like, no, you don't. No one does. I don't even think, like, they know where they're going from season to season. I'm pretty sure there's an end game, but God knows what it is. Oh, and this is a hell of a roadmap to get there. So, yeah, and in that period, Archie went from cookie cutter, the Archie that everyone knows, Archie wants to go out with Betty or Veronica, never quite sure, Jughead eats burgers, Reggie's terrible, to, yeah, like, turns out Jason was shagging Cheryl the whole time, that kind of thing. And as a shot to the bows, if you will, a signifier of things to come, before we even got things like Archie versus Sharknado, there was a late issue of Betty and Veronica towards the end of the run where they went like, well, we're going to get him to do a regular Betty and Veronica series, which ended up being 3 issues, but, you know, it's Adam Hughes, so that's what's going to happen. And he did this lovely cover for an issue of Betty and Veronica, which was really like a real precursor to this is where things are going. I can't say that, oh God, what? Man outwitted my mirror once again. I can't say it's realistic, but I can say it's bloody good. And it doesn't look like anything except one of the more interesting divergences that Archie took was the Life with Archie series, where they postulated maybe everyone had enough of working out who Archie would end up with. So he said, why not both? Not in a Tommy Dreamer hardcore way, I hasten to add. So they did 2 series. They had a series where the question was popped, will you marry me? But he does it to Betty in one timeline and Veronica in the other. And then Life of Archie was a magazine that followed both stories, in both timelines as separate stories, and then finished in Life of Archie 38, which featured Archie being shot to death. It was one of the harder comics to unbox, to be honest, because it had a lot of really nice covers. And Adam did one, I think Alex Ross did one, there's a whole slew of really moving covers, and it was quite strangely moving, because it's one of those things where you know Archie ain't going nowhere, this is a shtick, and they've already stated it's an alternate timeline, but it was so well done that watching the death of Archie, even though you know it's coming, and then watching the fallout and how it affects everyone in Riverdale, really good stuff. Would highly recommend, especially if you're an Archie fan, an older Archie fan, because it has a resolution to it. Maybe it's the end to the story that you don't necessarily want, but you might need. That's one of my big things, actually, with comics, is stories having an ending. I think a lot of stories meander. They don't have a point because they are a franchise designed to carry on regardless of anything, and therefore nothing significant can truly happen because the character has to be snapped back to the base model. So when you have something that says, okay, that's it, we're done, I think it's such a rare thing in comics to do that, but it stands out, and especially with something as beloved and entrenched in the psyche, especially of Americans, as Archie comics, who say, good night, we're done. Big deal. I think it's something more comics should aim for, is, because the things that matter, the things that have stayed relevant long beyond their time of publication, your Watchmens, your From Hells, your Bones, your Sandmans, your Preachers, your Lone Wolf and Cubs, they all stop because they have a point. And Spider-Man, Judge Dredd, Superman, Batman, who cares? You know what I mean? Like, it don't matter, because nothing's permanent. Like, whatever happens, they'll be back. I did this for a laugh when I was waiting for a bus. I was like, okay, just for a laugh, who in the Marvel Universe has died this century? So off the top of my head, Captain America, Hulk, Human Torch, the Wasp, the Vision, She-Hulk, Spider-Man, Wolverine. That was just a kind of like messing up. Hawkeye died. Jack of Hearts died. I'm pretty sure Iron Man definitely died. But characters who are dead, they seem to be populating quite a few comics. Do you know what I mean? Right. So actually it didn't matter, did it? So there's no resolution. There's no ending. So why invest? Why take the time? Why not just go after something that actually has something to tell you? So if you haven't read any of those titles I mentioned previously, 100 Bullets is another. Oh my god. So yeah, coming up in the next episode, on behalf of one of my American fans, called Such a Badass, I will be doing a show called Where to Start, and it would be a kind of like, a look at I'll talk about this more on Friday, but one of the things that I frequently got in my time working in Hackney, because I'd gone to great pains to make sure the place didn't look like the kind of comic shop I described earlier, like the yellowing promo posters from 10 years ago, and the boxes of back issues with no discernible marking, and prestigious like space given to wall books that nobody outside of the industry would care about. I made it like a shop that happened to sell comics, but that real human beings went into, not big lads in hoodies and like just discussing what printing of New Mutants 98 and all I've got all that crap. Like, I wanted it to look like a place where people could go into and have a conversation that other humans could join in, and it was good fun and it worked for a while. But the most frequent thing I was asked was, I don't know about this stuff, where do I start? And that told me a lot about how badly comics has worked to make itself so insular that it now appears to the regular civilian that you have to have some kind of in-depth knowledge, nerd hierarchy information at hand to be able to get into it. And again, the job of the comic shop is not to get you involved in some kind of crappy Ponzi scheme that involves resale. It's just to say, here's a thing to start with. So what I'll be doing is like working on if you don't know anything about this stuff, it's fine, because it is fine to not know about this stuff, in the same way that if you go into HMV, if that still exists, they don't go to you like, oh yeah, but can you name all 17 of the Manic Street Preachers B-sides from 1997? Like, no, because that's not real. That's just some hierarchy, please, I want to be the king of the geeks nonsense. You just say like, do you have this new record? Yeah, we do. It's here. Here you go. Oh, like, the end. And if you walk into Waterstone, it's like, I really quite like murder mysteries. It's like, oh, have you tried Agatha Christie? You know what I mean? Like, it ain't difficult. You just have to turn off the crap. So that's what this Friday's episode will be about. On to the next variant. Let's see what you guys are saying in the comments before we do that, though. The Crows, I'm a bit late. Not as late as you, though. Okay, so what have I missed? Somebody commenting on something else I said. Yes, okay. So, in the wake of a lot of things that happened last year, I am somewhat dubious about mentioning this because I'm not entirely sure of the facts. So what I will say, sidestepping that potential dubiosity, and if there is something I've missed, please feel free to tell me what I have said wrong. I don't mind being corrected on this kind of thing. But what I do believe, outside of the individuals involved with it, right, is that the comic book legal defense fund is one of the best things to happen to comics. This ties in with, I imagine if you're watching this show, you know a bit about comics, and you'll have heard about the whole fixing comic art thing, right? So, I haven't mentioned that because I thought I'd wait for everyone to cool off a little bit. I'm going to give you my take on it. As far as I'm concerned, using the phrase fix is antagonistic. Maybe it's not meant to be antagonistic, but it's very hard not to take it that way. But here is the problem with beyond the antagonism, is once you suggest that it is pertinent for a publisher or for an artist to change their work dependent on nothing except your standards, then you are creating an extremely dangerous precedent, and this is why. All the time there is an equal scale where everyone is, for want of a better word, ignored. We are fine, right? Not everyone is happy, in fact probably nobody is happy, but we are not paying the potential price that could be there. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. What the Comic Book Legal Defence Fund does, or did, is they would reach out to libraries or to comic shops who had been receiving undue pressure from outside forces to remove certain works, to have them removed from school libraries and stuff, and things like, say, Persepolis, which obviously ought to be in everyone's mind at the moment given current events, or things like Love and Rockets, which is a continuously progressive and positive portrayal of homosexuals, or things of that nature, right? That stuff, believe it or not, is continuously under attack from conservative, for want of a better word, forces. There is always somebody wanting to shut that stuff down, to remove these socially relevant pieces of work. Like, that's been going on for a long time, before I was born, so before any of you watching were born. Now, the Comic Book Legal Defence Fund have been very good at providing support for a lot of these cases, and there's been very few, even stuff like Sandman, because there are nice gay characters in it, like that gets grief constantly. What the Comic Book Legal Defence Fund does is it documents these cases. So if you go to CBLDF.com or something like that, it'll give you a full listing of cases they have held out of. Now, all the time we are a state of, and the best example I can give is the 1 Million Mums March, where Toys R Us was stocking Kevin Keller, #1. For those of you who don't know, he is the openly gay member of the Archie cast, and the 1 Million Mums group is a extremely conservative American pressure group who says things like, we would like there not to be positive representations of gay people in comics, because obviously that goes against the Bible's teachings. And Toys R Us, to their credit, said, no, that's not an argument. That is a hypothetical belief with no tangible standing. Now, if you say J Scott Campbell ought to fix his artwork according to these standards, you are opening Pandora's box, because if all you have is, you should do this based on my standards, then all the guys who want the removal of Sandman, of Love and Rockets, of Kevin Keller, of Persepolis, they now have the equal stance that you do, and they are far more organised than you are, and they will create pressure groups, and they will get these books removed, because now their I don't like this because is equal to your I don't like this because. And there's however right you think you are, and the conversation about the depiction of women in comics is absolutely one that should happen, but not on these grounds, because on these grounds this creates a danger that I don't think you can close up again. That's why. That's why this is you should fix this is dangerous, more dangerous than is possibly present on the surface if you don't think about this stuff. So, with that said, I don't know if they still do it, but the CBLDF do an annual every year, obviously given the title, which is basically a collection of short strips by people in order to raise money, for want of a better word, for what it is they do. I think they do some of the best work in the comics industry, along with the Cartoon Museum and the Hero Initiative. I don't think it's the business of adults to say these things should not exist because I don't like them. So to say there's a legal team willing to put their time and their experience into defending these works I think that's one of the best things that happens in the comics industry in the West. I don't know how there could be an argument against that. So yeah, I picked this particular one because, one, I really like the cover, but also, so this is Liberty Annual 2012, and the reason I mention it as having possibly some relevance is it has a Walking Dead strip in it, which perhaps not all of you were aware of. Now, I don't know how the collections work, so it's quite possible this has or hasn't been reprinted, but it's in here. So, if you want a short story about Walking Dead, Liberty Annual 2012 is your port of call. But there's also, what was the other really cool thing in here? Give me 2 shakes of a lamb steak. There's also a Brandon Graham Street. He's just started his new series, Raining Like Hammers. Also did, unbelievably, Rob Liefeld's Prophet comic, which is, it's really good. What else? Multiple Warheads is by him. King City, he did a jam issue of Empowered, Adam Warren, who is one of my absolute favourite comic creators. There's also a Roger Landridge strip in here. Roger Landridge, one of those very few comic creators who is funny. Genuinely, he has a Instagram called @HotelFred, which is normally has at least one new strip on it a day, and also has a few sketches. He did, obviously, one of the most treasured possessions in the world, which I think I've shown you guys before, which is the Rolf meeting Fing Fang Foom sketch, which he very kindly did for me for nothing. And there is also a there's also a Ben Temple-Smith strip. No reason, I just think Ben Temple-Smith's a really cool artist. He's in that same vein of Sienkiewicz and Andy Diggle and stuff. So, yes. So yeah, this is, like, they always ship these with 2 covers, but they've also done new strips by The Boys, which, the Boys strip is astounding. It's the longest and funniest appearance of Crypto the Superdog you'll ever see, and that's all I'm going to say about that. Speaking of Adam Warren, so Adam Warren has done a number of projects, all of which are very good. There's been, now I think probably the most famous thing that you Gajin would have heard of was the Gen 13 series that he did. He did Magical Drama Queen Roxy, and he also did some of the, dang it, what's the spin-off thing called? There was a Gen 13 spin-off which was basically like Legends of the Dark Knight, and it was like a, let's just get people to do 3 or 4 issues of Gen 13. Alan Davis did a couple, was it Unhinged? No, it's not the Unhinged. Anyway, look at Adam Warren Gen 13, you'll find it soon enough. Dirty Pair was him taking over the famous manga, which is about Kei and Yuri, 2 completely irresponsible bounty hunters, and Empowered is his deconstructionist take on superhero tropes via bondage. If you look at it, you'll see why him and Brandon Graham get on, because they are about the large booties. But it's really good stuff. Anyway, so Dirty Pair has run in various one-shots, mini-series, guest appearances, and Dark Horse Presents and stuff. In the Run from the Future mini-series, he decided, well look, I've done a number of these covers, why don't I get some of my famous mates to do some, maybe that'll attract some attention. It didn't, because people are weird like that, and just, you know, seems to be a really good comic with fantastic art, and it's really funny, so yeah, I wouldn't want that. So one of the people he got to draw a cover was Mr. Adam Hughes, we mention again. This is as rare as an extremely rare thing on a steak that has been cooked rare. Because it's Dirty Pair, and Adam wasn't Adam Hughes back then, but it's a beautiful cover. It's based on a Dave Stevens piece, which I think was the Vanguard Illustrated. And it's lovely, and it's just a kind of like, you should buy this, Adam Hughes thinks it's good because he drew a cover for it. But do you know who drew a cover for it? Bruce Timm! Bruce Timm did another cover for Run from the Future. So yeah, Dirty Pair, despite being incredibly dense, is also incredibly accessible. Like, all you really need to know are there are 2 women who do various jobs in space as bounty hunters and stuff. They get a new mission, chaos ensues. Adam Warren is one of those, what is known as chicken fat, right? So that needs some clarification. Will Elder is a comic artist who worked for Mad magazine, most notably, and also on Little Annie Fanny with Harvey Kurtzman for Playboy magazine. And he was the bringer of the chicken fat, where around the central image he would put a number of amusing details into the foreground and the background for the more keen-eyed viewer to take in. So yeah, you would find all kinds of interesting things, and Adam Warren is absolutely intense for that. Him and Jeff Darrow, like, their work, once you've read the story, it's always worth going through their pages again, just going seeing what other insane details they've added. So yes, Bruce Timm cover on one, Adam Hughes on another. That's probably quite good, isn't it? Last variant cover for now, because I just realised I've covered the other two on the previous show, and I don't want to repeat myself. This is just a cool one, and it's also a little bit of showing off. This is a Kevin Nolan variant cover to the Alan Moore anthology Tomorrow Stories, which was published for a short time by DC as part of the ABC imprint. There's quite a lot of backstory, and I'm not going to go through all of it now, but Tomorrow Stories is my favourite of the ABC line because it's fun. Jack B. Quick, who is the cover star here, is a multitude of ridiculous science-based jokes. At one point, a cow ends up blocking up a black hole, the speed of light gets arrested for speeding, all kinds of hilarious calamity and stuff. There's also a regular strip called Grey Shirt, which is I don't know if pastiche or homage are the right word, but they are a tribute to the Spirit using some of the cleverest forms of storytelling comics has seen. I think it's issue 5, which has 4 different strips running per page, but they're all in the same building, but in different different events in time, and they all correlate beautifully. It's one of the best things I've seen in comics, genuinely. It's up there with the issue of Multiversity by Frank Whiteley, which can literally be read in any direction. So yes, that's the Kevin Nolan cover. There's also the regular Alex Ross cover. I've got a copy of this signed by Melinda Gebbie, because Melinda draws, checks notes, The Cobweb, which is somewhere between the Tijuana Bibles and Black Canary, and it's usually quite good. Not what you expect a lot of the time. So that is the my favourite variant section of the show, and as we approach the end, not quite there yet, I said I had a big announcement. So it is this pauses to add drama, and also to have some more of his can of Rockstar. Sponsor me, Rockstar. So here's the thing. I've been thinking, maybe between the self-congratulation and the continuing crucifixion of the comics industry by people like myself, I feel sometimes we're being too serious, and we need to bring a bit of the mockery back. You know, like stuff that was in the Marvel Year in Review, which is what really opened my eyes to comics being able to mock themselves. I mean, like, you know, I'm fairly rife for parody myself, you know what I mean? Like, I've got a fairly distinctive look and quite a distinctive lexicon, so if you wanted to do a parody of me, I can't imagine it'd be that difficult. And I think for the same reason, maybe we need something that calcifies, that fossilizes those ideas, all those loose thoughts of mockery that have been knocking around, haven't been really explored for, well, a bit of a while now, since, say, around maybe 1992. And the reason I mention that year in particular is because there is a concept that I mentioned in one of the comics groups that I wanted to bring back, and I've put out a couple of feelers for a co-host for this, but again, I don't chase people. I say, do you want to do this? If I don't hear back, I assume they don't want to do it, right? So that position of co-host is still open, so if you are interested, please get in touch, because over the next few weeks, via the Mondo Funny Books page and the Captain Crappy and Fever Blisters network iconic, sorry Fever, you'll have to slap me later, I will be running a number of categories. Those categories will be leading to awards. Because what I am bringing back, hopefully to be filmed in the summer as a special, is, ladies and gentlemen, I think the world is ready for the return of the world's worst comics. In the days and weeks to come, I will find categories, both from here and create new ones appropriate for the times we'll be living in. You, the general public, or the admiral public, or the colonel public, or the lieutenant public, will be invited to both vote or suggest categories, and hopefully over the summer, me and a co-host will read out these special categories. And if I can't find a co-host, I'll put a bow tie on Rolf and I'll do it on my own, but with a muppet. Because this is what the world needs. We need to stop taking everything so seriously. We need to find a middle ground between I don't care and oh my god, run to the hills and lynch this person. And if you guys want to create a category that lampoons me, fine, do that. That's what we're doing next. The world's worst comics. So, before we wrap up, this is the time of year where us old comic fans tend to remember the great artist. That was Darwyn Cooke, who passed away 5 years ago last Friday. And he is the subject of tonight's reading. If you don't know Darwyn Cooke, you are forthwith set to check out his issues of The Spirit, or Batman Ego, or All-Star Western, or Jonah Hex, or what's the other big thing? Twilight Children, which he drew while being written by Gilbert Hernandez. He was one of the last true visionaries of the industry who got the innocence and potential and uplift that the industry could bring. His Parker adaptations are some of the finest things that this industry has ever brought us, and they were published by IDW, and I believe are still in print. People talk a lot about the Gil Kane interview in the Comics Journal in the 1970s as one of the great revelatory moments. The time where it showed the other side of the comics industry. A lot of what Gil Kane said at that point was his basic disappointment in the material that he drew. That he thought the industry deserved better, and there was much greater work of higher literary potential that he could have been drawing instead of drawing Spider-Man and Green Lantern. It was a sobering thing, but I think maybe open the eyes of a lot of people that, you know, that there could be more to this whole industry than just pumping out this month's Batman or Avengers. Darwyn Cooke did an interview with the top shelf version of Comic Book Artist. This is from issue 3. Any of this magazine is well worth checking. It's created by John B. Cook, first for Tomorrow's Press, then for Top Shelf, and then that Top Shelf run ended and he went back to Comic Book Creator, which is essentially the same thing, back for Tomorrow's. But this is my favourite issue. This is a big issue with Darwyn Cooke, also another one of my favourite artists called Mark Chalarow. Mark's a whole episode by himself. This was kind of the genesis of my opening my eyes to maybe us guys in our 20s and over, this is a long time ago, we shouldn't be the target audience for the superhero stuff. And Darwyn, having not worked in comics for very long, he'd come from an advertising background, was still interested in comics but just didn't end up there. Took him a long time to come back down to comics. He had some things to say, particularly about the way superhero comics are being written. So, rather than do his words injustice with my rambling, this is page 100 from, if you're looking for it, this is Comic Book Artist number 3, the top shelf edition. Should be easy enough to find. Tomorrow's have this in digital form, so if you can't find a physical copy, don't spend ludicrous amounts of money on eBay, just download it, because the content, like this copy, is knackered. Otherwise I'd get a digital copy and sell it, but I've reread this so many times because it's one of my Bibles, to be honest. So this is following a question from What is the New Frontier, which hadn't been released yet and now is obviously one of the great DC works that's been turned into a cartoon. What is the New Frontier? Cook. After I did Batman Ego, DC said, I think it would be cool if you could do something with the JLA. I didn't really have anything to say about the JLA until I looked at the period of time right before they became the team, and then I saw I had some room to move. As the project evolved, I realised that what was being done was maybe tearing through some of this revisionist shit that had been done. When I got into it, I saw that, geez, maybe what they did to Hal Jordan in Emerald Dawn, making him a drunk driver and all that kind of stuff. Frankly, I look at what writer Mark Millar did in The Ultimates, and I'm going to try and maybe represent the notion of a hero. And the notion that, you know what, maybe there are 6 or 8 people on the planet that should put others ahead of themselves if they had those abilities. And these are the people I'm talking about. I'm frankly disgusted by a lot of the stuff I see these days. Comic book artist. Are you talking about series like The Authority? Actually, Darwin. No, I think with The Authority, hey, go for it. They're original characters and that's the mandate of the book. No problem. However, in things like The Ultimates, it's like, hey dude, what the fuck are you doing with the Hulk and what is the point of this? Is it really this juvenile need to know that you've got a comic book printed where this green guy's running down the streets screaming that he's horny? Is there a point beyond that? Because I don't see it. This kind of degradation of the characters is disturbing to me. A lot of guys say to me, oh man, you're too old school, you're a fuddy-duddy. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm really not. I don't read superhero comics. I just don't understand why you adult men are trying to steal these characters away from kids. I don't know why you're taking something that's taken 30 years to build up and why you're subverting it in a matter of 2 or 3 months. I think something like, say, Ultimate Spider-Man is really put together, but I do question it. I don't understand it. I lay this mostly at the writer's feet. They need to tweak things out. I'm sure, as say, a lot of Greek people looked at Hercules for those kind of stories, and I consider comic book superheroes as a North American mythology. I don't see the need to deviate from the core stories that revolve around these core characters. I see the need to tell different types of stories or more adult stories. I can see why people want more sex and violence in their comics as they grow up, if that's what they want. I don't understand why Captain America or characters like that are the vehicle for that kind of expression. Comic book artist. Do you think it's a kind of tied into indulgence and the harm perhaps that has been done to the industry and it's losing sight? That's the problem, Darwin. I'll have to check this when I read over because I can see how it could really alienate me from a huge portion of my fan base, but I think what's happened, and what I would say the real problem with the industry, is the fact there are a bunch of adults who couldn't let go of it, and they've stolen it away from what is their ideal market. We found it a way to put these characters into stores that kids can't readily access. The older the reader has gotten, the bigger bang he needs for his buck. It's like sneaking a peek at Julie Newmar will do it for you. But by the time when you're 12 years old, that'll do it for you. But when you're 40, you need like a full-blown gangbang with all the cum shots. And I think that's what modern superhero comics are now. People who still want to get a jolt from characters they should have been prepared to leave behind or look back at with affection. I think Darwin pretty much summed up where superhero comics are now. But he did that in March 2004, nearly 20 years ago. So, God rest you, Darwyn Cooke, one of the last greats. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Mondo Murder Party. So long, and thanks for all the variants. For those of you crazy people, I will see you on Friday at 1 AM for So Where Do I Start on Monday Funny Books on the Captain Crapty Network. Stay tuned to the Mondo Funny Books Facebook page for the World's Worst Comics Awards. Until then, be safe, kiss your mum goodnight for me, and be well.